Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Michael Reads. It's a new day, it's a new chapter, and I'm really excited for this one. So, if you are new here, my name is Michael, and this channel is a space where we read, we reflect, and we have meaningful conversations around timeless books, philosophy, and personal growth. Um, Before we get started, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel, like the stream, and share it with someone you might enjoy or who you think might enjoy these discussions. It really helps the channel grow and it helps these conversations reach people who may need them. As well, feel free to chat and interact with fellow listeners in the chat box or simply ask me any questions during the stream. I'm just getting everything sorted here for you guys. Just if I could get some thumbs up, just to make sure that sound and everything is working fine. It looks like everything is all set up well and it's all good to go. So yeah, thumbs up, please, and yeah. Um, if you are subscribed to the channel, please turn your notifications on so that you are notified of future live streams, uh, future uploads, or some community posts because I'm trying to post as much as I can on the community posts just to keep you guys in the loop with anything to do with the channel. Sometimes I put in there some polls where I will ask questions and find out what you uh, expect of the channel. Yes, please turn your notifications on. And before we continue, I'd like to briefly acknowledge some of the feedback that I've received. And first and foremost, thank you for it. I genuinely appreciate everyone who takes the time to share their thoughts and help improve the channel. Some of you have suggested that I adjust the placement of my book when I'm going through my reading, so that I can stay more focused on the camera and interact with you all a lot more. I mean, that is something that I am mindful of, and I understand where that feedback is coming from. Um, at the time, I just want to be transparent about my intention here on Michael Reed's. I've chosen to read directly from physical paperback books rather than a PDF on the screen, um, because authenticity really it really matters to me. Um, my goal is to encourage reading as a habit, not just for you, but for myself as well, because I built this channel, just to introduce that habit, and that includes the simple, intentional act of picking up a book. You know, I'm trying to promote getting information from books rather than um, following social media posts or Wikipedia, which can, and does get edited quite often. A book will not change. So, yeah, I always have had the intention to read from the books. I mean, this channel isn't meant to replace audiobooks. Instead, it's a shared space for all of you. if at times it feels less interactive, just feel free to use it as an opportunity to just simply listen, to reflect, and be present with the text. And I'm also actively working on my fluency, which is something that I've received feedback about as well. Like anything meaningful, that will improve with consistency and with experience. So, thank you again for all the feedback, the patience, and most importantly, the support that I've had from you. It genuinely helps shape this journey, and I'm grateful to have you here giving this channel your time and attention. Um, so we are still on the great book of Bushido. I do apologize if my pronunciation is wrong. The Soul of Japan. And in my last live stream, we covered chapter one, Bushido as an ethical system. Um, in this chapter, we were introduced to Bushido not as a rule book, but as an ethical system. Bushido was shown as a way of life that shaped character from the inside out. It wasn't enforced by law, or fear or punishment, but it was enforced by honor, discipline, and personal responsibility. What stood out most is that Bushido expected the individual to govern themselves, to act rightly, not because they were watched, but because they knew who they were meant to be. So, at its core, Bushido was about living with integrity, even when no one else would ever know. And that brings us to chapter 2 today, which is titled The Sources of Bushido. In this chapter, Nitobi, Inaza Nitobi, he begins to answer an important question. Where did this moral code come from? Bushido did not appear overnight, and it did not come from a single book, religion, or lawmaker. Instead, it was shaped over centuries, influenced by multiple traditions and ways of thinking. So, Nitobi explains that Bushido drew its strength from three main sources. So, I mentioned these in the first chapter. There was Confucianism, which emphasized duty, loyalty, and moral relationships. Buddhism, which shaped inner discipline, self control, and acceptance of impermanence. And Shinto, which connected honor, ancestry, and reverence for tradition. Together, these influences formed a code that balanced reason, spirit, and action, which shaped not just warriors, but people. So, with that brief introduction, uh, I have to, I will have to go back um, to the drawing board, just so that I can streamline everything so that it meets people's taste and expectations. So, the sources of Bushido, of which I may begin with Buddhism. That's what Inazo Nitobe says. And I'll just have a quick drink before we get into it. It furnished a sense of calm trust in fate, a quiet submission to the inevitable, that stoic composure in sight of danger or calamity, that disdain of life and friendliness with death. A foremost teacher of swordsmanship, when he saw his pupil master the utmost of his art, told him, "Beyond this, my instruction must give way to Zen teaching." Zen is the Japanese equivalent for the dhyana, which represents human effort to reach through meditation zones of thought beyond the range of verbal expression. Its method is contemplation, and its purport, as far as I understand it, to be convinced of a principle that underlies all phenomena, and, if it can, of the obsolete itself, and thus to put oneself in harmony with the absolute. Thus defined, the teaching was more than the dogma of a sect, and whoever attains to the perception of the absolute raises himself above mundane things and awakes to a new heaven and a new earth. What Buddhism failed to give, Shintoism offered in abundance. Such loyalty to the sovereign, such reverence for ancestral memory, and such filial piety as are not taught by any other creed were inculcated by the Shinto doctrines, imparting passive passivity to the otherwise arrogant character of the samurai. Shinto theology has no place for the dogma of original sin. On the contrary, it believes in the innate goodness and godlike purity of the human soul, adoring it as the aditum from which divine oracles are proclaimed. Everybody has observed that the Shinto shrines are conspicuously devoid of objects and instruments of worship, and that a plain mirror hung in the sanctuary forms the essential part of its furnishing. The presence of this article is easy to explain. It typifies the human heart, which, when perfectly placid and clear, reflects the very image of the deity. When you stand, therefore, in front of the shrine to worship, you see your own image reflected on its shining surface, and the act of worship is tantamount to the old Delphic injunction, know thyself. But self-knowledge does not imply, either in the Greek or Japanese teaching, the knowledge of the physical part of man, not his anatomy or his psychophysics. Knowledge was to be of a moral kind, the introspection of our moral nature. Mommsen, comparing the Greek and the Roman, says that when the former worshipped, he raised his eyes to heaven, for his prayer was contemplation, while the latter veiled his head, for his was reflection. Essentially, like the Roman conception of religion, our reflection brought into prominence not so much the moral as the national conscientiousness of the individual. Its nature worship endeared the country to our inmost souls, while its ancestor worship, tracing from lineage to lineage, made the imperial family and the fountainhead of the whole nation. To us, the country is more than land and soil from which to mine gold or to reap grain. It is the sacred abode of the gods, the spirits of our forefathers. To us, the emperor is more than the arch constable of a r- resh- Reshtat, or even the patron of a cultural stat. He is the bodily representative of heaven on earth, blending in his person its power and its mercy. If what M. Boutme says is true of English royalty, that it is not only an image of authority, but an author and symbol of national unity, as to believe it to be, doubly and trebly may this be affirmed of royalty in Japan. The tenets of Shintoism cover the two predominating features of the emotional life of our race: patriotism and loyalty. Arthur May Knapp very truly says, in Hebrew literature, it is often difficult to tell whether the writer is speaking of God or of the commonwealth, of heaven or of Jerusalem, of the Messiah or of the nation itself. A similar confusion may be noticed in the nomenclature of our national faith. I said confusion because it will be so deemed by a logical intellect on account of its verbal ambiguity. Still, being a framework of national instinct and race feeling, Shintoism never pretends to be to a systematic philosophy or a rational theology. This religion, or is it not more correct to say the race emotions which this religion expressed, thoroughly imbued Bushido with loyalty to the sovereign and love of country. These acted more as impulses than as doctrines for Shintoism, unlike the medieval Christian Church prescribed to its votaries scarcely any credenda, furnishing them at the same time with agenda of a straightforward and simple type. As to strictly ethical doctrines, the teachings of Confucius are the most prolific source of Bushido. His enunciation of the five moral relations between master and servant, the governing and the governed, father and son, husband and wife, older and younger brother, between friend and friend, but a confirmation of what the race instinct had recognized before his writings were introduced from China. The calm, benignant, and worldly wise character of his politico ethical precepts was particularly well suited to the samurai, who formed the ruling class. His aristocratic and conservative tone was well adapted to the requirements of these warrior statesmen. Next to Confucius, Mencius exercised an immense authority over Bushido. His forcible and often quite democratic theories were exceedingly taking to sympathetic natures, and they were even thought dangerous to and submersive of the existing social order. Hence, his works were for a long time under censure. Still, the words of the master mind found permanent lodgment in the heart of the samurai. The writings of Confucius and Mencius formed the principal textbooks for youths and the highest authority in discussion among the old. A mere acquaintance with the class of these two sages was held, however, in no high esteem. A common proverb ridicules one who has only an intellectual knowledge of Confucius as a man ever studious but ignorant of analects. A typical samurai calls a literary savant a book smelling sot. Another compares learning to an ill smelling vegetable that must be boiled and boiled before it is fit for use. A man who has read a little smells a little pedantic, and a man who has read much smells yet more so. Both are alike unpleasant. The writer meant thereby that knowledge becomes really such only when it is assimilated in the mind of the learner and shows in his character. An intellectual specialist was considered a machine. Intellect itself was considered subordinate to ethical emotion. Man and the universe were conceived to be alike spiritual and ethical. Bushido could not accept the judgment of Huxley that the comic process was unmoral. Bushido made light of knowledge as such. It was not pursued as an end in itself, but as no means to the attainment of wisdom. Hence, he who stopped short of this end was regarded no higher than the convenient machine, which could turn out poems and maxims at bidding. Thus, knowledge was conceived as identical with its practical application in life, and this Socratic doctrine found the greatest exponent in the Chinese philosopher Wan Yang Ming, who never wearies of repeating, to know and to act are one and the same thing. I beg leave for a moment's digression while I am on this subject, inasmuch as some of the noblest types of Bushi are strongly influenced by the teachings of this age. Western readers will easily recognize in his writings many parallels to the New Testament, making allowance for the terms peculiar to either teaching the passage, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you," conveys a thought that may be found on among any page of Wan Yang Ming. A Japanese disciple of his says, "The Lord of heaven and earth, of all living beings, dwelling in the heart of man, becomes his mind. Hence, a mind is a living thing and is ever luminous." And again, "The spiritual light of our essential being is pure and is not affected by the will of man." Spontaneously springing up in our mind, it shows what is right and wrong. It is then called conscious. It is even the light of proceedeth. It is even the light that proceedeth from the God of heaven. How very much do these words sound like some passages from Isaac Pennington or other philosophic mystics. I am inclined to think that the Japanese mind, as expressed in the simple tenets of the Shinto religion, was particularly open to the reception of Yang Ming's precepts. He carried his doctrine of the infallibility of conscience to extreme transcendentalism, attributing to it the faculty to perceive not only the distinction between right and wrong, but also the nature of physical facts and physical phenomena. He went as far as, if not farther than, Berkeley and Fitch, an idealism denying the existence of things outside of human ken. If his system had all the logical errors charged to solipsism, it had all the efficacy of strong conviction and its moral import in developing individuality of character and equanimity of temper cannot be gainsaid. Thus, whatever the sources, the essential principles which Bushido imbibed from them and assimilated to itself were few and simple. Few and simple as these were, they were sufficient to furnish a safe conduct of life even through the unsafest days of the most unsettled period of our nation's history. The wholesome, unsophisticated nature of our warrior ancestors derived ample food for their spirit from the sheaf of commonplace and fragmentary teachings, gleaned as it were on the highways and byways of ancient thought, and, stimulated by the demands of the age, formed from these gleanings a new and unique type of manhood. An acute French savant, M. de la Mazilière, thus sums up his impressions of the 16th century. Toward the middle of the 17th century, all is confusion in Japan. In the government, in society, in the church. But the civil wars, the manners returning to barbarism, the necessity for each to execute justice for himself, these formed men comparable to those Italians of the 16th century in whom Taine praises the vigorous initiative, the habit of sudden resolutions and desperate undertakings, the grand capacity to do and to suffer. In Japan, as in Italy, the rude manners of the Middle Ages made of man a superb animal, wholly militant and wholly resistant. And this is why the 16th century displays in the highest degree the principal quality of the Japanese race. That great diversity which one finds there between minds, as well as between temperaments. While in India and even in China, men seem to differ chiefly in degree of energy or intelligence. In Japan, they differ by originality of character as well. Now, individuality is the sign of superior races and of civilizations already developed. If we make use of an expression dear to Nietzsche, we might say that in Asia, to speak of humanity is to speak of its plains. In Japan, as in Europe, one represents it above awe by its mountains, to the pervading characteristics of the men of whom M. de la Mazilière writes, let us address ourselves. Okay, that brings an end to chapter 2. I mean, what makes this chapter so powerful is the reminder that strong values are rarely born in isolation. I mean, Bushido was not rigid or narrow. It evolved, absorbed wisdom, and adapted while still holding firmly to its core principles. There's a lesson in there for us today. It says character is not built from one idea, one book, or one moment of inspiration. It's built by what we allow to influence us, what we practice daily, and what we choose to stand for when it would be easier not to. So, as we reflect on the source of Bushido, it's worth asking ourselves what values are shaping us right now? And just as importantly, are we choosing them consciously? So, with that, I would like to say thank you for spending your time with me. And if this discussion, uh, if it resonated with you, please like and share. And I look forward to continuing this book and going on to the next chapter. But I thank you so much for your time. Cheers for Michael Reed. Oh, sound is